Hey everybody, real quick, before we get into the Season 3 recap of Snowpiercer, if you need a Season 2 recap, I'm going to put a tab in the upper right-hand corner. If you need a Season 1 and 2 recap, there'll be another tab coming up shortly. Just wait for that. Season 3 picks up 6 months after the events of Season 2. Leighton's train continues to go around the globe, evading Wilfred. And things aren't going so great with Wilfred's train. Since the explosion, it's freezing cold. There's no more classes, but if it did resemble a class, it would be a mix of the tail and third. Everybody's just kind of trying to survive, and everybody's miserable. All the while, Wilfred is in Big Alice, having Javi drive his train while he's trying to track down Leighton. And Javi's on the mend, but he's also pretty miserable. There is one place of the train that Wilfred never goes to. That's the bowels of the train, because it's the coldest part of the train. They actually have workers there to de-ice it. One of those workers is Pike, and Pike is a part of the Resistance. The leader of the Resistance is Ruth. She's hidden away in the train, and just like how Leighton is trying to evade Wilfred, Ruth is doing the same thing, but right under his nose. The Resistance uses a spy system to get information on what is going on in the engine room. It gets down to Pike, and then Pike relays it back to Ruth. And the latest information being is that they finally got a hit on where Snowpiercer might be. And this is big news because it's the first proof that they have that Snowpiercer is still alive in the last 32 days. Ruth has no idea exactly why they're evading the train, but she figures that Leighton must have his reasons. Pike, on the other hand, is a little concerned that maybe just Leighton took off, planning never to return. Oh, and they also have no idea that Melanie isn't alive. Even with these poor conditions, it's not like Wilfred doesn't have people on his side. Kevin, for example, is very loyal to Wilfred, doing his bidding. He's noticed that there's pilfering going on, and he's vowed to get to the bottom of it. Then you have people like Zara, who are more of in the Javi category. They work for Wilfred, but it's more of a necessity. Javi, because he's got a dog next to him that's going to tear his face off, and Zara works for him because, well, she's really, really pregnant. Zara's job is to get the updates on the train, and the updates lately are never good. Zara suggests that they just cut first class completely, but Wilfred is completely against that, vowing that he will restore first class to glory once he gets his engine back. For the time being, though, it's completely abandoned and very frozen. Kevin actually suggests that they just start killing people off to conserve everything, but Wilfred tells him we can't do that. We need to keep everybody alive so that Audrey stays alive. Audrey is still very much on Wilfred's mind. Once Zara leaves, Kevin and Wilfred go back to talking about how they're going to break down the Resistance. And the reason the Resistance has so much support backing it isn't only because conditions are miserable, but also because they're giving out things that people need, like antibiotics and bathing tokens, for example. And with conditions below freezing, a hot bath goes a long way. But all the stealing has gotten to the point where Kevin can't ignore it. He needs to find some resolution to it. So he goes to the night car. The night car is currently being run by LJ and Osweiler, the happy couple. Wilfred basically gave them the night car to run. So when Kevin comes calling for information, they feel like they kind of owe him. LJ and Osweiler have no idea who's running the Resistance or where to find this person, but there's somebody in the proximity who might know. It's a former jackboot who really likes alcohol, and he just so happens to work in water security. He doesn't want to give up any information, but eventually he says that the second-class watermaster was giving up hot baths in order to help the Resistance. When Kevin gets this information, he excitedly calls up Wilfred, tells him he has a lead, and then they go and get the watermaster. The poor guy's name is Arnaldo Reyes, and unfortunately for Arnaldo, he smells really clean. They catch Arnaldo, and they catch a former jackboot who was also supporting the Resistance. Both of them had no choice but to give up the location of Ruth. And once Pike finds out, he tells Ruth, we got to pack up and go right now. So Ruth grabs as much stuff as she can carry, and they hop in the vehicle that's supposed to take the ice away. They narrowly avoid the jackboots and Wilfred. Ruth has been playing this cat and mouse game for months. There's really only one place left to go where they won't look, and that's first class. When they get there, everything is frozen. As Pike escorts her to where she's going to be living, Ruth makes comment of the fact that Kevin didn't put any of the items away. She's mortified by it. But she's forced to walk right past it and go into a little hiding nook. Pike was able to set it up with a couple of space heaters, and it's currently a very comfortable -12. Ruth gets settled in her new digs, and Pike heads back because there's a public humiliation that's going to be going on with the jackboot who was caught, as well as the watermaster who gave her the hot bath. Pike doesn't want to participate in it, but it's a situation where if he doesn't, He's a little guilty, so unfortunately he has to. One person that is noticeably absent from this, though, is Wilfred. And that's because he's with the Headwoods, who are tending to Zara's baby, who looks like he or she is ready to come out. Now, over with Leighton, he didn't just decide not to come back, so Pike's theory holds no weight. For the last 6 months, he's been circling the globe, using Melanie's research to try to find a hotspot that they might be able to live in. They've been collecting ice samples, but so far, it's been pretty fruitless. To make matters worse, every time they stop, the engine starts overheating, which is giving Alex a fit. That's what happens at the latest location. As Ben is outside grabbing ice samples, the train starts overheating. Alex radios to him that he has to come back immediately, but Ben feels like it's an error. Ben and Alex start arguing about what they're supposed to do, and Leighton, who's in charge, tells Alex, just do what you can for the time being. Alex is frustrated, but does what she's told, and as they're waiting for Ben to come back, Bess goes to check up on her prisoner, Audrey. Sykes is also a prisoner, but she's at least come around to being a cooperative prisoner. There's also a third person there, a guy named Martin, who unfortunately was a first-class resident, and when the cabin exploded, he was just taking a nap. Wrong place, wrong time. Now he's stuck with Leighton and his group. Bess goes to give them their daily meal, which, food, by the way, is running very scarce. And they start talking about what's going to happen when they re-link up with Wilfred's Snowpiercer. Martin figures they're just going to trade Audrey for Zara. Audrey, however, isn't even thinking about that. She's just insulting Sykes over and over again because she feels like Sykes is a traitor for not fighting back and cooperating with Bess and Leighton in that group. In the middle of the conversation, if you want to call it that, the phone rings, and when Bess picks it up, Leighton is on the other end saying, you got to come over here quick, lock them up, but if they ask what's going on, tell them it's nothing you need to be concerned with. In reality, it's a big concern. As Ben was coming back, the ice gave way, and he fell into what was an abandoned building. This is going to cause Leighton to have to go out and find Ben. But Leighton isn't the only one going. Josie demands to go with him. The issue is they can't just sit there and wait for them to go get Ben and bring him back. By that point, the engine is going to be toast. They need to get the thing moving. So Leighton's orders is to leave them behind and then just circle back for them. By that point, the engine should be okay from overheating. As Leighton and Josie are getting dressed, Josie's a little bit frustrated because she feels like Ben shouldn't have been out there. She feels like Ben has been chasing this pipe dream that Melanie put in their heads. But Leighton wants to stay the course, reminding her that they all agreed they would go, find this, quote, new Eden, and then return to the others and take them there. But after 6 months, Josie's a little concerned that there might not be a new Eden. They then finish up getting dressed and head out to go get Ben. When they leave, the train leaves. When Leighton and Josie get to the hole that Ben fell through, he's in pretty rough shape. His suit isn't holding up. If he continues to just sit there, he's going to end up freezing to death. So they're going to have to act pretty quickly. They hook up a pulley system, and they go down to grab Ben. Leighton hooks Ben up to the switch. They pull him up, but Leighton tells Josie, take him back. He's struggling. I'll catch up with you guys. Josie doesn't want to do it, but she can't argue with the logic. But that's when Leighton starts looking around the building that he's in, because it looks like it's been lived in. He pokes around a little bit more, and he all but confirms it. I mean, there's generators running. There's also, however, blood on the walls. When he goes into one of the rooms, he all but confirms it. Lights are on. There's pictures up, but that's when he's attacked by the person who lives there. Leighton is able to get the best of this person, but this mystery person ended up damaging his suit. Leighton's in pretty rough shape. Leighton is able to hook the suit up just in the nick of time to save his own life. But Leighton can't just let this mystery person sit there. So Leighton starts dragging the person back to Snowpiercer. And Snowpiercer has made its way back, but with some minor technical difficulties. Like Martin being convinced by Audrey that he should let her out. Sykes, however, wanted no part of it, but Audrey and Martin end up storming the engine room, locking up Till, and then trying to convince Alex that they should just leave Josie, Leighton, and Ben behind. Till, however, breaks out, knocks Martin and Audrey out, and convinces Alex to go back. They pick up the entire group, along with Leighton and this mystery person. And when they settle in, they start nursing this mystery person back to health, and it turns out the mystery person is a female. Oh, and it's also worth mentioning that Leighton has been having visions of New Eden. Might be one of the reasons why he's reluctant to go back and meet up with Wilfred. In episode 2, as this mystery woman is on the mend, Till, Leighton, and Ben go over the latest model, but it's not great. Yes, while that area is warming, it's not warmed enough for them to actually live there. Maybe in another century, but not now. They have one more spot that they can check out, which is located off the Horn of Africa, and it's actually pretty promising. Josie points out, though, they don't have enough food to make it there, and on top of it, they have another mouth to feed. So Leighton knows that they're going to need to go back and reconnect to the train. He's completely comfortable with dragging everybody to this new hotspot to check it out. Till and Alex point out that the problem isn't taking the other train, it's keeping the other train. They're basically going back empty-handed. They don't have Melanie, and they don't have proof of a new Eden. But Leighton says, we're not going back empty-handed. We have a survivor. He then goes to check on that survivor, and when she wakes up, she's disoriented, confused, and confrontational, understandably so, but Leighton calms her down. He explains to her that she's on Snowpiercer, and that is shocking to her because she never expected that train to survive. He starts walking her through the train, but she starts to get a little freaked out when she sees Audrey in a cage. Leighton says, that's a long story, and I'm sure you've got a long story that I want to hear too, but first things first. Leighton asks for her name, and her name is Asha. Josie then escorts her to a cabin that she's made up for her, and they let Asha get settled before they start questioning her on how the hell she's alive. Up in the engine room, they have an issue because they have no idea where Snowpiercer is. They figure that Wilfred is tracking them, which is correct, but they're going to need to get the jump on Wilfred, and they can't do that because they, once again, have no idea where he is. It's basically like trying to find a needle in a haystack, and it's Ben's headache. For the time being, he's just hoping that he can hop on the main track and track him down that way. While they're trying to figure out how to get Wilfred, Leighton is trying to figure out what his vision was of. He heads to the library where Audrey's chained up, and Audrey's questioning him on who that mystery woman was and what exactly he's doing, but he's like a horse with blinders. He's not paying attention to any of it. He goes to a couple of the books and the encyclopedias, and he's able to figure out what it was that he had a vision of. His vision was of something called a dragon's blood tree. After researching it, he goes to Till and he tells her about the vision, how real it was, how he could feel the sun, how he was near the grass. He is convinced that this is the place that they're looking for. The craziest part is that dragon's blood trees only grow where they're trying to get to, the Horn of Africa. Till figures that this dragon's blood tree thing was just something deep in the recesses of his brain, but he tells her, no, I've never heard of this before. Till's suggestion is to keep it to himself, because he sounds crazy. A little while later, Leighton brings Asha some food and gets the backstory of how she's alive. She tells him that there were 34 of them to start. Most of them were scientists and, like herself, nuclear technicians. Marauders killed about half of them before they died out, and then the cold and the radiation poisoning took the rest of them. Like her nephew, who was 15 years old and developed thyroid cancer so badly that he was begging her to kill him. He was the last one to go, and that was years ago. She didn't see anybody after that for 4 years until Leighton popped up. After getting the story, he heads to the engine, and Ben gives him an update that isn't a good one. Their satellites are slowly degrading. They're still driving blind, having no idea where Wilfred is. The plan that the group decides to go with is to parallel the main line and hope the signal improves that they can catch him on the satellite. But over with the train that they're chasing, their number one fan, Ruth, has some visitors, and that's weird because she's in a part of the train where nobody goes because it's so cold. She knows that Wilfred is up to something, so she has to get word to Pike. The way that she does that is through a rat courier through the pipes. And Wilfred is indeed up to something. Kevin is helping him, as is Mrs. Headwood. Unfortunately, Mr. Headwood isn't there because he passed away. Pour one out for an OG. But the thing that they're helping Wilfred with is an EMP machine. Electromagnetic pulse. Can basically kill all electronics when it's fully charged. Wilfred, however, just wants to test 10% of it. He doesn't want to kill his train. He just wants to make sure this thing works. So he gives the order to count down and see if they can test this thing out. As the EMP is counting down, Ruth, who is one of the closest humans to it, unknowingly, is telling Pike about where this mystery weapon is. It's in the last car where the trains would need to reconnect. As she's telling him this, though, she starts to cough. Her health is deteriorating a little bit. Running around in the bowels of the train, freezing her ass off, is not doing her immune system any good. As they're talking, though, they hear the machine go off, and they're a little freaked out. But Wilfred is thrilled because it worked. There's an electrical jolt throughout the cars, but nothing major to kill any equipment. And one of the reasons it didn't kill the equipment on their train is because of the fact that first class, being completely frozen and empty, is the perfect buffer between their equipment and the machine. So Wilfred is in great spirits. But he's not the only one. LJ and Osweiler are in great spirits because they just got engaged. They're getting married. Yay. As soon as she says yes, LJ tells Osweiler, we need to go tell Wilfred. He's the closest thing I have to family. So the two head up to go tell Wilfred the good news. And when Wilfred gets the news, he's pumped because he feels like this could be an occasion that the train needs. They haven't had a wedding in a long time and it can boost morale. He wants to do it that day. Osweiler was thinking more of an intimate ceremony, low-key, but Wilfred insists and LJ is pumped about it. So Wilfred just hijacked Osweiler's wedding. Wilfred immediately goes into wedding planning mode, putting up posters and alerting the train's occupants that they're going to be throwing a party that night. But as Wilfred and his team are distracted with this wedding, Pike pulls Zara aside and asks her, do you know anything about the weapon that he's building back in first class? Zara has no idea. She just knows he's up to something. Pike then tells Zara that Ruth saw Javi working on it, so she'd like to make contact with Javi. The problem is, Javi hasn't been the same since his face was bit off by a dog. He's not really talking to anybody. Pike, however, pressures Zara to get it done. Zara heads up to the engine, but it's just like she said. When she tries to talk to Javi, he shuts her out. The only time that he responds is when Zara says that Wilfred wants him down in first class. He tells Zara, I'm on shift, but she says, I don't know what to tell you. That's what he wants, so put it on autopilot and go. But when Javi heads down to first class, Wilfred isn't waiting for him. Ruth is. And he is shocked. He, like just about everybody, thought that Ruth was on the other train. She tells him, no, I've been here the whole time, trying to help out Leighton and our friends out there. She can tell that Javi is in a pretty fragile state, so she tells him, I just need a little bit of your help. Tell me what it is you're working on back there. And Javi tells her it's good to stop Leighton dead. He then just turns around and runs out. But as he's making his way back to the engine, he runs into Kevin. And Kevin finds it a little bit weird that Javi was down in first class. Javi doesn't rat Ruth out. He says, well, I was just testing some stuff. And at first Kevin believes him, but then he gets suspicious. Kevin knows that a wedding would be the perfect distraction for anybody. So he grabs a bunch of jackboots and starts heading to first class. And he's right. I mean, a wedding would be a perfect distraction. It's one of the reasons why Ruth, Pike, Strongboy, and Lights, and they're trying to figure out how to disable this thing. Kevin, though, is coming right their way. He's abandoned the wedding, which, by the way, almost didn't happen because Osweiler and LJ got in a big fight, but it went down. Anyway, back to the group. When they hear that Kevin is coming, Ruth knows that she has to do something. She decides to sacrifice herself. She figures that when Kevin sees her, he'll just take her and not search the rest of the train. It'll free them up enough time, hopefully, for them to disable it and give Leighton a fighting chance. Pike doesn't want to allow her to do that, but Pike doesn't have a choice. Ruth hands over the resistance to him. It does work. When Kevin shows up, he's shocked to see Ruth, and Ruth just says, yep, here I am. You've been looking for me. Well, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm giving myself up. Kevin then takes Ruth and escorts her to a prison cell. He alerts Wilfred, and Wilfred is excited. He's finally got the rat that he's been searching for. He's a little surprised that it's Ruth, but he starts gloating to her about how he's going to cut her arm off, which to him is the ultimate irony because she had frozen the most arms of anybody. But that's when all of a sudden a massive electric-magnetic pulse goes surging through the train. Pike, Lights, and Strongboy were able to disarm it, kind of. In their attempt to disarm it, it actually turned it on at full blast. They realized they had to get rid of that thing quick, so they literally busted it through the back of the train. When it went off, it affected just about everything, and that includes Leighton's Snowpiercer. But it also gave Ruth the chance to gloat, saying, I wonder what that could have been, and Wilfred knows exactly what it was. That was not planned. He decides not to prolong freezing Ruth's arm off. So he wraps up the wedding and has everybody gather around to make a public display of it. Starts talking about how she was a rat, how she was caught, preparing her all the while. But they're about to get some unwanted guests. Because when that EMP went off, it alerted Leighton and his group to exactly where Snowpiercer was. It gave them the chance to get the jump on Wilfred. And that's exactly what they do. Before Wilfred can freeze Ruth's arm off, the train gets a jolt. Right away, Pike knows that Leighton's group is back. And Wilfred isn't concerned. He completely forgets about Ruth altogether, yells to the people to man their battle stations, and gets ready to go to war with Leighton one more time. Episode 3 picks up right where Episode 2 left off. Ruth is escorted back to the prison, and Wilfred prepares for battle. But Leighton's Snowpiercer didn't stop. It actually kept going. Wilfred knows he needs to act quickly, though, because the resistance is fired up. The issue is, as he plugs on to try to catch up to Leighton, he's slowed down by a roadblock that Leighton put there. While he tries to catch up to Leighton, he instructs Kevin to go find members of the resistance and make an example out of them. Wilfred starts looking at the maps because he knows that Leighton isn't going to connect end to end. He would just be picked apart by jackboots. But there's a rail yard coming up of parallel tracks. He figures that's where Leighton was going to want to make his move. But as Wilfred is trying to figure out what Leighton is going to do, Leighton is in his car trying to figure out the same thing. He's trying to figure out which track he needs to maneuver to be side by side with Snowpiercer. The plan that they do have for when they do get parallel to Snowpiercer is for Josie to hop on over, bridge the gap, create a distraction that causes Leighton to go over and take Big Alice. But as Leighton waits for Snowpiercer to catch up, in the bowels of Snowpiercer, the Resistance is at work. But it's not really Resistance work, they're just actually doing their jobs. Pike, however, knows that he needs to get to Ruth, let her know what's going on, and try to formulate a plan. But Zerek reminds him, we can't afford to lose you, man. You're in charge now. So Strongboy creates the distraction. When Strongboy creates this distraction, though, Kevin has the members of the Resistance that he needs to, quote, make an example out of. Strongboy, Zerek, a few others, they're all arrested and taken to the night car. As they're being interrogated, LJ and Osweiler are being awoken from their, quote, honeymoon because they need to open up the night car and entertain the jackboots that are there. LJ is loving the kind of torture that's going down. Osweiler, however, does not. He tells LJ, I didn't sign up for this. LJ tells him, war isn't pretty. Wilfred will protect us. But Osweiler says, yeah, if he wins. I mean, what happens if Leighton rolls in here? He sees us, Wilfred's little wedding puppets? LJ, in an attempt to try to convince both of them, says to Osweiler, we're not guilty, we're just providing a venue. All the while, Kevin is torturing Strongboy by freezing digits of his hand and smashing it until he talks, although Strongboy isn't talking. It gets to the point where Kevin actually freezes Strongboy's tongue in an attempt to get him to talk, but he still doesn't say anything. At this point, though, both trains are parallel. Josie gets in position to make her move, but she has to pull back at the last second because she notices that Wilfred has some sort of cannon, and he does. It's like a grappling hook that's going to penetrate Leighton's train and drag it in. It forces Leighton and his train to quickly divert tracks, but when they do, they almost derail. It gets so bad that they're going to have to cut the last 4 cars off of the train. They're barely able to get Asha out of there, but when they cut free, they're good to go. The issue is when they cut free, they have completely lost Wilfred altogether. And he has cut off communications, so they don't have any sign of him. They're once again driving blind, and I'll remind you, they don't have much food. When Leighton Snowpiercer had to divert tracks really quickly, Wilfred celebrated, and he did it with Zara. He made Zara watch it all. What he's blown away with, though, is the fact that Zara showed no emotion whatsoever. He even says, I just hobbled your man, and you don't show anything. But Zara still doesn't show any emotion. Wilfred proclaims to both Javi and Zara that at this rate, the war will be over by daybreak. Wilfred has Zara sit down and he starts telling her how much he has invested in her and the child, but she cuts him off and says, yeah, and the fact that they're not going to attack the engine if I'm in it. That shuts Wilfred up, and he walks back over to Javi to try to figure out what their next move is going to be. But little do they know that the resistance is raging on. Pike did make it to Ruth's cabin. He was able to intimidate the jackboot who was keeping guard to move aside. It's actually the same jackboot who gave up the details on the Watermaster helping the resistance. The guy's probably not cut out for that job. Pike gives Ruth an update on what's going on, and Ruth tells him, well, if we're rolling around the dark, we need to signal Leighton on where we are. Pike, though, starts talking about getting Ruth out of there, but she has to remind him, no, this war is bigger than both of us. We need to signal Leighton, and I have an idea. She tells Pike about fireworks that are located on Snowpiercer that he can let off, and how exactly he should go about doing it. So Pike takes off to try to signal Leighton's car. And over with Leighton, they need the Resistance's help. They have no idea where Wilfred is. Leighton, however, does need to go talk to their newest member, Asha. For the time being, he seemed to have put her in Melanie's old cabin, but Asha is just sitting in the dark with her helmet on. When Leighton comes in to let her know that it's going to get worse before it gets better, she starts kind of demanding some answers. She asks why exactly Mr. Wilfred damaged the train, and when Leighton brings up the fact that it's just a cat and mouse game, she kind of scoffs at that, saying, oh, and you're supposed to be the cat? 8 of you versus the great Mr. Wilfred? But Leighton tries to set her straight, saying, he's not as great as you think he is. We saved our own damn selves, and this is personal for us. I'm just here to warn you. In order to kind of put her mind at ease that they're not going to attack the train, and it is personal, Leighton reveals that he has a partner on Snowpiercer who's pregnant. To which Asha says, if you're doing this for a child, you will do things that you never thought were possible. But she doesn't say it in an inspiring way. She says it more in a, I've been there, trust me kind of way. Leighton then heads back to the engine room because they're at the point in the rail yard where it's their best opportunity to see Wilfred again. They have pretty much everybody with binoculars looking all over the place for any sign of Snowpiercer, but nothing yet. That is, until they see the fireworks that Pike turned on. It's exactly what Leighton needed, but it's exactly the opposite for Wilfred. Now that Leighton knows where Wilfred is, they can figure out exactly what his plan is. And his plan is to sneak out of the rail yard, because if he does, he's pretty much gone forever. But because of the fireworks, Leighton is going to try to beat him to it, cut him off. It works. They block Snowpiercer, and Wilfred has nowhere to go. Both engines are actually pointed at each other. The first thing Leighton does is make sure that their deal is still intact. He was supposed to keep Audrey safe, and in return, Wilfred was to harm nobody, especially Zara. Wilfred confirms this and even has Zara talk to Leighton over the loudspeaker so he knows that she is indeed safe. Leighton, in return, has Audrey talk to Wilfred. If you were wondering, the romance is still very much alive with those two. As Audrey is unknowingly distracting Wilfred, Leighton gets ready to go aboard Snowpiercer. Once Wilfred kind of gets his head together, he makes his next move on the chessboard, telling Leighton's train that if they don't reconnect, Snowpiercer is just dead on the tracks. This is going to result in everybody freezing to death. Ben grabs the microphone and tells Wilfred, "You're desperate." But Wilfred lets him know, "You don't have a choice." So Ben tells him, "Prepare to connect." And if they do that, there's going to be a bunch of jackboots waiting to take them into custody. But they don't have to worry about that, because Ben tells Javi a message in Spanish, and Javi opens up the side door. Then Josie hops up on the windshield of Big Alice and starts distracting him, acting like she's going to penetrate the windshield, which would kill everybody, including Zara on board. It freaks out Wilfred just enough to lock himself out of the engine room, but he backs up right into Leighton's hands. Leighton beats the crap out of him, and then he orders Wilfred to tell his men to stand down, and they do. And then Wilfred announces to the train that Andre Leighton has it. Leighton announces to everybody that they're back, and then he returns into Zara's arms for the first time in 6 months, which is a little awkward for Josie because the two did kind of kiss, although Leighton did have to put an end to it, saying, "I'm kind of with somebody." The two trains connect, and Leighton is back in charge. Some people are thrilled about this. Other people, like Kevin, are distraught. Then there's LJ, who turns to Osweiler and says, "I think it's about time we get on the right side of history." She hands Zrek an orange and then stabs Kevin in the throat. It takes Osweiler completely off guard. He did not see that coming. But she proclaims to everybody, "Long live the resistance." So she just changed teams in the blink of an eye. After Leighton puts Wilfred into custody, he goes and meets with Ruth, and they have a celebratory drink about his return. He then tells Ruth about the plan to get everybody to New Eden. Ruth is a little concerned, though. She tells Leighton, "We just had a really tough 6 months, and now you're going to drag them into the toughest stretch of track." But Leighton shakes his head and says, "No, I'm going to put it to a vote. We're going to show people democracy works." That's cause for concern for Ruth, because she's not confident that Leighton is going to win. She reminds him that half the people on board aren't big fans of him, but he promises that he will convince them that this is the right move. In order to do that, though, he's going to need Asha's help. He brings her into the library and tells her that everybody's going to have a vote on where they're going to go next, including her. But in order to guarantee that they go to the new place, they're going to need to lie, and Asha's going to have to be a part of that. Asha agrees, and the two head to make the announcement that they're putting the location to a vote. As those two were talking, back in Leighton's old home, the Tail, they're in mourning because, unfortunately, Strongboy didn't make it. Some people who have survived are in drawers, and that's who Till goes to check on. She checks on Roach, who is stable, Carly is stable, and Anne is stable, but she's in such rough shape that Till gets pretty emotional looking at her. And then finally, there's the reunion between Javi and Ben. That's also a pretty emotional one, because this is the first time that Ben is seeing Javi since his face was chewed up by a dog. They reunite, and Javi just cries into Ben's arms. A little while later, everybody hears Leighton's announcement on the plan to put it to a vote. And then he turns the mic over to Asha, who lies to everybody, saying that not only did she survive, but she's from New Eden. That's exactly what Leighton was looking for. Everybody on the train does vote, and it's an overwhelming yes to going to New Eden. And it's all because of Asha's lie. Ruth gives the good news to Ben, Leighton, Josie, Alex, and Till. And they all start kind of talking about the fact that this is yet another lie on a train that's kind of built on lies, like the mysterious Mr. Wilfred and Melanie being out there. Leighton, however, thinks that this is going to be the last one. But one person who isn't at this meeting is Asha, because she is still in the library, and she is once again wearing that helmet, and it doesn't seem like she's holding it together all that well. In episode 4, as they make their way to the Horn of Africa, Ben decided to take a shortcut, but it backfired. There's a blockage on the track. But But the blockage isn't going to be able to be easily removed. It's 4 train cars from Big Alice that Wilfred bailed on. He did it so they could conserve heat, and energy, and food, and all of that. But now they're basically bolted to the track. Alex and Ben call down to Leighton to find out what he wants to do about it. But Leighton is in first class, along with Asha answering a bunch of questions from people about New Eden. When Leighton gets word that he's needed, that kind of ends the conversation. It's a good thing because Zara's story's already cracking a little bit. As Leighton is leaving first class, he sees Pike on the staircase and he says, "You're late." But Pike says, "You didn't invite me." Leighton tells him, "You're days late. We could really use you. You stepped up as a leader, and people could really use you if you let them." Pike makes his way down the staircase and tells Leighton, "While you were gone, we lost both Last Australians and Mama Grande to the flu, and then you show back up and we lose Strong Boy." Leighton says may they rest easy, but Pike is still annoyed. He looks at Leighton as the leader who left them. So that relationship isn't really any better. Leighton then gets up to the engine room and gets the details on what is blocking the track. The alternative is just going back the other way, and that's going to take far too long. They need to move those cars. The only way to disengage these clamps is to actually board the cars, power them up, and then manually disengage them. Alex immediately says, "I'll go." But Ben tells her he's going with her. It's going to be a 2-engineer job, and Javi can drive the train and then come pick him back up. Both Alex and Ben put on the suits, get everything they need, and they head out to the cars. Oh, I should mention that Alex is having full-blown conversations with Melanie. Or Melanie's ghost, at least. And she's not the only one, because Wilfred is doing the exact same thing as he tries to figure out where they are on the track from prison. After he left the engine, Leighton heads to go hang out with Zara, and he starts telling Zara about his dream of New Eden, everything it details. But that doesn't mean he isn't concerned about the fact that he might be wrong, and Zara reminds him, "Yeah, but what if you're right?" After he wraps up with Zara, he has a lunch date with Asha. Asha is still getting reacclimated to just eating normal food. Leighton turns over his shoulder and notices that Dr. Pelton is under the dining car. So he goes and talks to her, and this isn't a coincidental run-in. Dr. Pelton tells Leighton that she was sidelined for Zara's pregnancy. Dr. Hedwood took over. Pelton snooped around and found Zara's file, and in it, she finds the reason that she was sidelined. It's because Wilfred had Dr. Hedwood inject the baby with cold treatment, the same stuff they gave Josie. When Leighton finds out that Wilfred was experimenting on his unborn baby, he snaps. The first person he goes and yells at is Dr. Hedwood. Dr. Hedwood promises him that her treatment is going to work, but he starts screaming at her, "What about our consent?" And that's when Dr. Hedwood says, "You probably should go talk to Zara." And when Leighton does, he's shocked to find out that Zara did consent to it. She figures everybody has to adapt or die. They start getting an argument about her real motives. Was it for the baby, or was it for her own protection? Protection she probably needed because Leighton wasn't there. It gets really heated. The argument only ends when they get a phone call telling them that Leighton's needed in the engine. Now, while all of that drama was going on with Leighton, Till went and woke up a buddy, Roach. Unfortunately for Roach, Anne didn't make it when they tried to wake her up from the drawers. Because of that, he's having a tough go of it. He's drinking a lot and being an absentee father to his daughter, Carly, who is a teenager. And, teenagers normally hate their dad, but because he's not around, it's even worse than normal. Till figures she needs to help her friend cope, so she takes him to the drawers. Roach asks for a minute alone, but it's not to grieve or to take it all in, it's to steal medical equipment. Because Roach wants payback. After she leaves Roach alone, Till heads to the night car, where she sees Asha. The night car has been turned back into a nightclub. And at first, Asha is loving it. She's taking it all in, having a blast, but then it becomes too much. She makes her way to the back, where that private room is that Audrey used to help people remember things in. Unfortunately for Asha, the things she's remembering are horrific. It's her having to fight off attackers and really fight for her life. Till checks on her, and Asha tells her, "I just don't think I was worth saving. I might implode." Till tells her that everybody feels that kind of guilt. She understands what kind of pressure Asha's under, and Asha cuts her off and says, "I'm not going to spill the lie. I can see what New Eden does for everybody, and their psyche and their souls." Till then escorts Asha back to her quarters. But back with the engine, Leighton was called there for a reason, and it wasn't just to catch up and chit-chat. It was because Ben and Alex have hit a roadblock of their own. First of all, their whole mission's been a mess. Alex, having lived on Big Alice, knew exactly what they were walking into. And what they were walking into is basically a crypt. When Wilfred dropped those cars, he didn't drop them empty. People were on them. And thus, people were frozen to death and died right away. Alex knew some of those people. She was saved by Wilfred, which made her feel chosen, but it didn't take away the pain that she dealt with because she had a best friend on that car. And going back to that car, seeing her best friend's bunk, seeing her best friend's body has done a lot to her. She feels immensely guilty. Ben, though, gets her back on track with the mission at hand. Some of the cars they're able to detach right away. There's one, however, that appears to be blocked. Alex's theory is that that one car has always been a lemon. It's constantly breaking down. That's one of the reasons why Wilfred dropped it when he did. But because of that, they might have to ask Wilfred because he might know how to detach it. It's something that nobody really wants to do. Ask that guy for help. Leighton heads down to Wilfred's cell and says, Ben, I'll patch him through. But when Leighton gets there, Wilfred is not doing well. Because that payback that I talked about with Roach, he got it. He showed up in his brakeman outfit, heads down to where they're keeping Wilfred, opens the cell, and then injects him. Wilfred feels it right away. He's loopy as hell, and you figure whatever Roach injected him with could eventually kill him. About a minute after Wilfred's injected, Leighton comes down, sees him writhing on the ground, and asks Roach, what the hell happened? And Roach says, I gave him a dose of his own medicine. Leighton gets down and starts smacking Wilfred's face, trying to revive him, saying he would love to watch him die, but they need him at the moment. Even in his loopy state, Wilfred says, oh, you found the cars. Leighton explains he will save him if he gives him the information he needs, but Wilfred doesn't give any information and asks Leighton, how's Zara and our child? And when he says that, Leighton starts screaming at him, don't ever go near my family again. At this point, Till has made it down, and she wants to know what the hell happened. Leighton quickly fills her in, tells her, get Roach out of here, and get me Dr. Pelton immediately. When Leighton looks back at Wilfred, he is passed out. He has no other choice. He has to call up to Javi in the engine room and tell him they need to abort the mission. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that while Wilfred and Alex have been talking to the ghost of Melanie, Javi is still traumatized by that dog. It seems like every time he turns around, he sees him, even though the dog isn't there. When Javi relays Leighton's message, Alex and Ben don't take it well. They need more time. Ben yells to Javi, get Leighton back on the line, but Javi is too distracted. He feels like that dog is breathing down his neck, even though it's a figment of his imagination. Alex refuses, though, to give up. Even as Ben is packing up to leave, Alex is still trying to figure out how to unhook these cars. She gets that help from the ghost of Melanie. Through Melanie's guidance, she's able to face her fears of being back in that car and uncouple the train. This allows them to clear the track and Snowpiercer to continue on to the Horn of Africa. When she gets back on the train, Alex also faces her fears about Wilfred. She admitted to the ghost of Melanie that she missed him, and it's understandable. Wilfred was kind of like a father figure, even though he was sick and twisted and a narcissist. So as Wilfred is hanging on by a thread in the medical bay of Snowpiercer, Alex is sitting there right by his side. Oh, and finally, Ruth and Pike hooked up. They went out for some Bananas Foster, and then they had adult fun. So good for them. At least somebody's getting laid on that train. In Episode 5, Snowpiercer continues to make its way to New Eden, and Alex continues to watch Wilfred as he's on the mend, although he hasn't really woken up yet. Alex, though, isn't the only person that wants to see Wilfred. Audrey tries to get to him, but Dr. Pelton stops her and says, you're not even supposed to be in second class. You're restricted to third class. Get out of here. When Audrey pleads the case to Alex that Wilfred needs her, Alex just says, no, he doesn't. But most of the train is getting ready for the baby to arrive. This is the first baby in a while, so it's a big deal. The tale always had a tradition of suggesting names for a new baby. They're continuing that tradition. All the kids in school are writing their preferred name onto a card and putting it on a tree. Most of the time, though, the tale would settle for whatever city that they were closest to, which is why Winnie, his real name, is Winnipeg. Even with all the suggestions that they have, Leighton and Zara still have no idea what they're going to name the baby, but they better figure it out soon because Zara's water breaks, and they have to rush to go see Dr. Hedwood. At the time of Zara's water breaking, Dr. Hedwood was in a meeting with Josie. Josie's been experiencing some pins and needles sensation, but that's not really concerning her because that comes and goes. She's been also having a lack of sensation, which is concerning to her. So Dr. Hedwood starts going around her body, literally poking it to see if Josie can feel it. Hedwig doesn't exactly know why it's happening, but does figure that it's just a reaction from the cold treatment. When Dr. Hedwig gets the call that Zara's water breaks, she rushes Josie out, though. It's go time. Dr. Hedwig will not be the only doctor there, though. Zara and Leighton invite Dr. Pelton, which Dr. Hedwig is completely against, but Zara flat out tells Hedwig, "This is my preferred doctor. She's staying and helping, whether you like it or not." It forces Hedwig's hand, and she has to abide by the patient's edict. But Leighton is stressing everybody out, and a little while after Zara is admitted, she kicks him out. With Zara now at the finish line, all of Snowpiercer is alerted to this by the new head of hospitality, Ruth. She's back in her teal jacket and looking dapper as ever. After making the announcement to the car, Ruth heads to the tree, because the second tradition is that when the mother goes into labor, they light up the tree with all the names. It's supposed to be beautiful, and normally it is, but this tree lights on fire. The good thing is the fire is put out pretty quickly, but when Till looks into it, she realizes this isn't just any electrical fire. This is straight up arson. Somebody wanted to send a message. When Till and Leighton link up, Till shows Leighton her discovery. Now it's just a matter of trying to figure out who exactly would want to do it. The one substance that was all over the wires was ethanol, and there's one place to get that, the night car. So Leighton and Till head up train to go meet with Osweiler and LJ. While they're doing that, two lovebirds reconnect. Pike ends up running into Ruth. Ever since he really took hold of the resistance, Pike has wanted that power. He feels like he could do a better job than Leighton. He looks at Leighton like a guy that abandoned him, while Pike was left back to fight the good fight. Now that Leighton's back, he doesn't want to take orders from him. He floated this idea earlier to Ruth, but she didn't really give him an answer, and now he gives her, quote, last chance. Part of his proposal is that she won't have to listen to Leighton, and that the two together could really form a formidable 1-2 punch. Ruth is completely content, though, with being the head of hospitality. She's good where she's at. Pike is a little hurt and a little disgusted with the fact that Ruth won't go with him. He looks at Ruth and says, "I guess I'll see you around." Around the same time Pike was leaving Ruth, Leighton and Till were arriving in the night car. They question Osweiler and LJ about their whereabouts, and Osweiler lets him know that even though he's a nut, Wilfred ran a pretty tight ship. They accounted for every drop of ethanol they used, so if they want to check the books, go ahead. But the real place that they should be looking is the Speakeasy. It's ran by Leighton's people, the Tailies. So Osweiler takes him there. And sure enough, it's run by Z-Rek. When Z-Rek takes him down to where he stores the ethanol, he quickly realized that somebody stole part of his stash. And they stole a lot of it. More than would have been needed to simply spark an electrical fire, which means somebody is running around the train with a lot more left. And that is a big issue. They both need to figure out who did this before the baby comes, so they split up. Till goes and has a talk with Audrey, and Leighton goes and has a talk with Wilfred because he's supposed to be coming out of suspension. Maybe he knows who's doing this. The conversation that Till has with Audrey really doesn't go anywhere. Audrey admits to watching the fire, but she didn't do it, and she doesn't know who did. Before Till leaves, she tells Audrey, "You need to find a rock bottom before you can't come back. I know who you used to be. You used to be a healer. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the power that you had in the night car. So to hell with you for giving that all up, because we're going to need that healing power once we get off this train. Pull yourself together." And then she leaves. Leighton's conversation with Wilfred doesn't really go any better. When he arrives in the medical bay, Wilfred is still knocked out. He does come and go, but not enough to actually form a sentence or anything like that. To try to stimulate the brain, Alex has been reading to him. Wilfred does recognize Leighton's voice and mumbles, "Leighton, the baby bells." But when Leighton asks Wilfred if he has any fire starters in his flock of followers, the only thing Wilfred said is, "A lot of people hate you," which Leighton is quickly realizing. Leighton isn't able to extract any more information out of Wilfred because Ruth comes and grabs him. There was an issue in the seed bank car. That's where they're holding all the seeds so that when they finally do get to New Eden, they can plant anything they want. So it's a pretty big car, and there's yet another fire that's raging in there. Ruth was alerted by the engine, and the engine was alerted by Javi and Sykes. Javi and Sykes were put together by Ben. Ben simply can't trust Javi at all to run the train right now in his current condition. He feels like maybe having a partner would help, especially because Sykes dealt with a very similar situation as Javi. Her face was bitten off by Wilfred's dog. At first, Javi is completely against it. He doesn't trust Sykes at all, and he doesn't want a partner. He also feels betrayed by Ben because Ben doesn't think he's a competent engineer anymore. But all of that quickly dissolves when Sykes tells Javi how she was able to get over the dog bite. The worst part for Sykes is she doesn't even remember what she did to piss Wilfred off to get that scar on her face. She also tells Javi that while it was going on, all she could think of was, well, it's not the dog's fault. The fact that Javi has somebody else in the room that went through what he went through does help him. And when the fire goes on, it kind of snaps Javi out of it. When Leighton arrives in the seed bank, he doesn't exactly find a blazing inferno. He finds a trash can fire, one that he easily extinguishes. But Leighton is unknowingly being watched by Pike. And Pike stole a bunch of ammonium nitrate, which is exactly what you use to make a bomb. And that's what he does. He makes a bomb and sets it up. The fire was just a way to draw Leighton in. When Leighton gets within range, Pike detonates it. Luckily for Leighton, Till, who showed up, and one guy from hospitality, they don't get killed. They leave with minor scrapes and scratches. But they are pretty shaken by this. Somebody clearly just tried to murder Leighton. Leighton is woken up by Sykes as Javi gives the engine an update that the seed bank was miraculously saved. As if things couldn't get worse for Leighton, he has to make his way down train because he is desperately needed in the medical bay. Zara is not doing well. The cold treatment to her unborn baby dropped her internal temperature. It is dropping rapidly fast. She needs to get this baby out to legitimately save her life because her temperature is at something like 96 degrees. When Leighton does finally show up, the first thing he notices is just how cold she is. But with Leighton there, Dr. Pelton and Dr. Headwood, a few pushes and baby Liana comes out happy and healthy. Ruth makes the announcement to the train, and everybody's thrilled that we have a new passenger on board. A little while later, Wilfred comes out of suspension, although he's still woozy as hell. Audrey takes Till's advice, grabs a guitar, and starts entertaining third class, and that performance is seen by Pike, who realizes just what a shitty thing he was doing to Leighton, how low he stooped. So he sneaks off to an unoccupied part of the train, and he destroys the triggering device for the rest of the bombs that he planted. But the one place we really haven't talked about this entire episode is what happened in the engine. While Leighton is having a baby with Zara, Josie was having a tough time with that. She's still in love with Leighton. She confides in Ben because these two people are in love with someone that they can't have. Ben is still in love with Melanie, but he can't have her because she's dead. Josie's in love with Leighton, but she can't have him because he's with Zara. As Ben slowly teaches Josie how to be an engineer, they bond through this. And when the announcement of the baby comes, they hook up. So baby Liana might not be the only new passenger on Snowpiercer. Who knows, in 9 months, we could be welcoming a baby between Ben and Josie. All right, probably not. But still, there's a lot of sex going on in Snowpiercer now that everybody's back. In episode 6, the hunt for Leighton's killer is on. Everybody, especially the tailies, want to find this guy. So it's a little awkward for Pike. Leighton, Zara, and Liliana are held up in Wilfred's old car. Astrid, Zirek, and Pike show up, and Leighton's thrilled to see them. He looks at both of them like brothers. He's even happy when he checks Pike and sees that he's carrying a weapon. Eventually, Astrid and Zirek leave to set up a border. But this is such a big deal that Ruth tries to go and check in on Roach, who's in the mental car. The psychiatrist, though, does not think it's a good idea to release him because Roach is still obsessed with retribution. Ruth decides to go and talk to Roach on her own. Maybe she can convince him and let him know that he's needed. Roach is non-responsive. Ruth asks Roach to just tell the psychiatrist what he wants to hear. Get out of there. Get on with his life. Not only does the train need him, but his daughter needs him as well. But the psychiatrist is correct. Roach is still obsessed with vengeance. He's not in the right mental state to get out of there. Unfortunately for Ruth and the rest of the car, they're going to have to do this one without Roach. Back up in Wilfred's old car, Leighton is obsessing over who might have killed him. He's convinced that it's Wilfred, but Zara doesn't think it is. She just doesn't think he's the right guy for this, especially in his current state. All the while, Pike is acting like a friend. And Zara and Leighton are appreciative of it, so much so that they give Pike Liliana to hold for a little bit. When Pike finds out that the baby's name is Liliana and they didn't keep with the tale tradition of naming babies after the closest city, he's not happy. But Leighton tells him Liliana suited her better. For Pike, this is another example that Leighton is not really a tailie anymore. The phone then rings, and it's Till. Till was really the boots on the ground, trying to track down exactly who this was. And what she was able to find out is that the bomb that took out Leighton was a similar bomb to a tailie revolution after year 3. Which means that it must have been a tailie. Till goes to Lights because Lights is the bomb maker, and Lights swears up and down that it wasn't her. And Till doesn't actually believe that it was. But she asks to know who would have known how to make the bomb. And when Lights goes to show her her cookbook, the page where you make the bomb is missing. So the phone call to Leighton was to let him know that it was somebody in the tail. And that's when Leighton figures out that it was Pike. By the look in Leighton's eye, Pike knows that he's been found out. But he has leverage because he's holding Liliana. Leighton and Zara start begging Pike to hand over the baby. Leighton telling Pike, this is between me and you, man. We can talk this out, but give the baby over to Zara. Pike is so insulted by the fact that they really think he would harm the baby that it pisses him off even more. Eventually, though, he does hand over Liliana, but he runs out of there and runs into hiding. Word starts to circulate through hospitality and the brakeman that Pike was the one who put the hit out on Leighton. And this really surprises Ruth. She makes it her mission to clear Pike because she doesn't believe that he'd be capable of this. She goes to his quarters, but she doesn't find Pike. She finds Till and Leighton searching around. When she sees them, she has to come clean about the fact that she had a relationship with Pike. After all, they spent 6 months fighting Leighton's war together in the shadows. This is pretty surprising to both Till and Leighton, but they quickly get back to the message at hand, with Ruth not believing that Pike could be capable of such a thing. And that's when they hand over the torn-out pages from Lights' cookbook that were found in Pike's room. It shows that Pike is guilty. Leighton and Till go make an announcement to the tail to let them know that Pike was the one that put out the hit on Leighton. Most of the tailies don't even believe that it could be possible. Even after Leighton shows them the torn-out pages, they still don't believe it. But Leighton's message is clear. If you see Pike, you're supposed to bring him in. Doesn't matter that you guys are old friends. You tried to blow up somebody, so do your civic duty. And Pike just so happened to go back to one of his hiding places. It's a place where he was making the bombs. But he got caught by Asha. Asha couldn't take all the people and the sensory overload, so she ended up finding that nook of the train and hiding out in it, putting on her helmet. When Pike shows up, she's ready to battle, but Pike makes it clear from the get-go, hey, I'm not here to hurt you. As Pike is collecting another bomb, they start talking about New Eden and where exactly Leighton found her. Her story starts cracking. Pike does not believe it for a second. It doesn't make any sense. If she knew about New Eden and she came from New Eden, why didn't she stay in New Eden? Why didn't Leighton find her in New Eden? Pike doesn't really have time to sit there and grill her about it because Ruth shows up, confronting him about what he did. Ruth tries to convince him to turn himself in, but Pike won't. She's also not going to rat him out after what they went through. Pike ends up just walking off. As the tailies are sort of but not really trying to find Pike, Alex had nothing to do, so she went to go eat. While she's eating, she notices Callie, Roach's daughter. She starts trying to talk to her, but Callie's pretty rude. She looks at Alex like Wilfred's little pet. Since Wilfred did what he did to her family, she's not really in the mood to talk. Alex, though, is pretty undeterred, sits down right across from her, and the more they do start talking, the more that they become friends. They solidify that friendship when Alex uses her powers from engineering to get Callie in to talk to her dad. And Callie is able to do what Ruth couldn't, convince her dad to tell the shrink whatever he needs to hear to get out and get back to normal. Now back up where Leighton's being held, Leighton, Till, and Zara get a visit from two familiar faces, Josie and Miles. Miles is doing great. He's still in the internship program and thriving, but he came up with an idea on how to make this Pike thing work. Old Yvonne's rules. It's a tailie tradition. If two tailies have a disagreement with each other, they have to sit it down and talk it out. They're not allowed to leave until they both agree. Leighton's all for it, but Zara isn't, and that's because there's one little catch with old Yvonne's rules. If the two parties don't agree, then they fight to the death. Josie and Miles, though, remind everybody that Leighton's in power. He has to yell for the knives. If he doesn't, then Pike has no choice but to sit there and talk it out. And tailie pride will get Pike out of his hole. It's really the only way. So Leighton makes the announcement to the train, and a little while later, Pike shows up in the tail, ready to talk it out. He's not empty-handed, though. He is holding a bomb that he hands over to Ruth. He says goodbye to Ruth. Josie reminds everybody of the rules, and then they talk it out privately. Just Leighton and Pike. Ruth, who wasn't allowed to stick around, needs to forget about what's going on, and she finds it in Roach's cabin. She ends up waiting for the results of this tailie tradition with Till, Roach, and Callie. But back in the tail, Pike's big problem with Leighton is the fact that he feels like he was used as his errand boy. Leighton admits that, yeah, he was, but they're also brothers. He thinks highly of them. Leighton tells Pike he's willing to put all of it aside and asks him, what do you want? But all Pike wants is for Leighton to call for the knives. Leighton goes so far as to offer Pike the title of Godfather of Liana. Pike would be touched if it was anybody else, but he tells Leighton, I see right through you. He then reveals to Leighton how he saw Asha and started talking to her, and he knows that setting course to New Eden was based on a lie. Pike is willing to tell everybody about this. So the only way that Leighton is going to be able to lead the train to New Eden is if he calls for the knives. And Leighton doesn't have a choice. He has to. Everybody is very surprised when they hear Leighton yell for those knives, including Josie, but they have no choice. It's Taily tradition. So Josie brings them in, and the two guys start battling it out to the death. As Zara is standing outside, disgusted, yelling for them to let her in, because, it's safe to let in a woman with a newborn in the middle of a knife fight. The two combatants start swinging punches back and forth until eventually they grab the knives. And in the end, it's Leighton who stabs Pike first. Pike's last words to Leighton are, I hope you find it frozen. Then he keels over and dies. Everybody on the train is made aware of the results. Those who want to come and pay their last respects to Pike's body, and that includes Ruth. Leighton says to Ruth, I'm sorry. And she just looks up at him disgusted and says, I'm sorry too, and walks off. Leighton cannot tell anybody the reason on why he called for the knives, which makes this even harder. Another part of this tradition is Leighton is to stay with the body all night to reflect. And he's trying to do that. But then he starts having those flashbacks of New Eden. They start coming very quickly until he gets so disoriented that he just collapses in the room. Now, two people we really haven't talked about much are Wilfred and Audrey. I guess after that little speech that Till gave her and that concert that she performed, she's still not over Wilfred. She feels like she needs to see him, but there's really only one person that might be able to get her in, and it's LJ. The price for a ticket up train is LJ's father's replacement eye. She hands it over to LJ, and LJ is able to convince a brakeman to cuff Audrey, escort her up train, and let her have her, quote, conjugal visit with Wilfred. But the Wilfred that Audrey finds is not the Wilfred that she left behind. Coming out of the drawers, Wilfred is a beaten down man. He even tells Audrey at one point, I'm not like I used to be. I can't take a punch. And Audrey is pretty pissed off about this. She yells at him, I spent the last 6 months in a cage, in this cage. Never once did I doubt that I would be reunited with you and we can take back the train. But while Wilfred is excited to see Audrey, taking back the train is not on his to-do list. He's looked at the science of the theory of New Eden and he's even bought in, which pisses off Audrey even more. She has no interest in getting off the train. She wants to control the train with Wilfred. And when Wilfred says to her, we can get off and we can have each other, she just walks off. In episode 7, after the ceremony, Josie and Zrek come in to grab Leighton, but they just find his body. Josie checks for vitals and tells Zrek, go get Dr. Pelton immediately. They usher Leighton to the medical car and they start doing a bunch of procedures on him to try to revive him. Nothing, however, is really working. When Till comes to Josie to get an update, Josie doesn't really have one. The doctors are currently working on him. And Till sort of blames Josie for what went down. After all, Josie did say everything was going to be fine, and it wasn't. Zara shows up a few seconds later and asks, what the hell happened? And Josie says, I don't know. He just wouldn't wake up. By the time Dr. Pelton comes out to give them an update, Ben has joined the group as well. She tells them, he's stable now. You can come visit him. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, though. He's in a coma. The only advice that Dr. Pelton has for the group is just to stay, hold his hand, talk to him, things like that. Things that Till is not willing to do. She leaves. Leighton being in a coma is pretty emotional for Till. Tries to go to a secluded area of the car to have a good cry, but she finds the one area of the car that Audrey is at. She doesn't want Audrey to see her crying, but it's too late. Cat's out of the bag. And Audrey looks way more like the old Audrey and less like the Wilfred fangirl that we saw a couple hours ago. News of Leighton has gotten all over the train, including to Audrey, so she tells Till, I'm sorry. She tries to comfort Till, but Till doesn't want to hear it. After all, Leighton and Audrey didn't have the best relationship. Right before she leaves, Audrey tells Till, talk to him. If he's still in there, he's going to hear you. And that's when Till has a great idea. Audrey should do that. Do what she used to do in the night car. Getting inside people's heads is Audrey's thing. It's not Till's thing. Audrey's skeptical, but she did just tell Till that talking to him was worth a try, so she agrees to help Till with this one favor. When Till shows back up in the infirmary with Audrey, Zara and Josie aren't exactly thrilled to see Audrey. Till explains her idea, though, and once again, it's worth a try, so why not? Audrey ends up performing what she used to do in the night car, but it doesn't work. Leighton doesn't wake up. But like Audrey said, just because he didn't wake up doesn't mean he didn't hear her. As Audrey was trying to revive Leighton, Zara and Josie had an awkward conversation outside. After all, Josie wants to be with Leighton, but Leighton wants to be with Zara. It's a real lover's quarrel, if you will. Josie does apologize to Zara for everything that went down because Leighton was never supposed to call for the knives. Zara, though, doesn't blame Josie for what happened. Through more conversation, Zara tells Josie that back in the tale, Josie and Leighton used to do a really good job of just taking care of everybody. They make a really good team. It used to threaten her, but not anymore. The reality is, Zara and Leighton are better as co-parents than being a couple. She then apologized to Josie for, quote, turning her back on her. And Josie cuts her off and says, whoa, your back was against a wall. I don't blame you for what you did. Zara then tells Josie that she's just really glad that she's there with her that day. And she's also glad that Leighton has her as well. Now, though, everybody just has to play the waiting game to see if Leighton wakes up. And Leighton did wake up, but it was in his mind. He's in a dreamlike state. He's in Snowpiercer, but it's not the Snowpiercer he remembers. He starts off in the engine, but nobody's there. When he closes a door, he notices that the Wilfred symbol that's on all of the doors is gone, and instead, the W has been replaced with a skull. He's kidnapped by what appear to be brakemen or jackboots, but he's weirdly saved by Wilfred, Javi, and Ruth, although it's not the Wilfred, Javi, and Ruth that he knows. They're dressed up like they're in 1925 Cuba, and Leighton is very confused. Through talking with Till in this dream world, he finds out that in order to get back home, he has to go meet with the tail boss. And nobody wants to meet with the tail boss. It's a suicide mission. But through a series of events, he makes his way back to the tail. When he meets with the boss, he kind of expects Pike, but instead, it's a woman he's never met before. And he figures out pretty quickly that that woman is Liana. He starts to panic, though, because that wasn't supposed to be her future. What he's currently doing is all for her, but this future, it ain't it. A bomb then goes off, and instead of being in Snowpiercer, Leighton is back in that underground bunker where he found Asha. He's once again wondering what he's doing there, what's going on, how to get home, but he knows that he's close to getting back. He sees that there's one locker open, and when he goes to look into it, Asha slams it and says, don't look in there. Curiosity gets the better of him, and now he needs to know what's in there. She tells him, you're not going to like it. The group is then attacked by a bunch of marauders, probably just like what happened to Asha in the real world. Leighton ends up getting knocked down, and he realizes that that is where he first saw New Eden. It was when he passed out from the lack of oxygen for his suit. After they kill the marauders, he stands up, and he's finally able to see what was in that locker. And Asha was right. He didn't want to look in there, because it's a calendar featuring the tree that he keeps having visions of. At that moment, real-world Leighton comes out of his coma. Everybody's thrilled that Leighton is back with them, but Leighton is clearly shook. He tells Josie, what if I was so desperate to give everybody a future that I made one up? I can't lead this train if all I have is a lie. As Leighton is confiding in Josie, Till went down train to go find Audrey to let her know that Leighton has come out of it and Dr. Pelton thinks he's going to be okay. Audrey says, you're a really good friend to Andre. Bess, you care so much about everybody else, but you won't let anybody care for you. Why is that? Till doesn't answer her, though, just telling her it's been a long day and walking off. As I said, the news about Leighton reached pretty much everybody on Snowpiercer, including Wilfred. But after that talk with Audrey, Wilfred looks more like the old Wilfred, much more revived, and he looks like he's on a mission. He asks the brakeman to go get him Alex, and he starts combing over maps, books. It's a pattern that Alex recognizes. Alex asks him, all right, what's going on? And he starts asking for tools like charts, compasses. Alex, however, thinks it's so he can kill the guards. He says, no, this is big. This is real hope. And if you don't help me, we may never know. Just like Leighton in Asha's underground bunker, curiosity gets the best of Alex and she agrees to help Wilfred. Through a bunch of encyclopedias, he's able to map out the exact route of all of the tracks. Alex, though, is still confused. He explains to Alex that after the train separated, he followed the trail. He realized he never was going to catch them. He had to intercept. About 3 months in, he thought he caught a break. There was a track link signal around Marseille. He followed it there, but there was no sign of Leighton in his train. Alex says, yeah, we were nowhere near that signal. We were on another continent. Wilfred, smiling ear to ear, says, yeah. So the question is, if it wasn't you, who was it? Alex has no idea, but Wilfred does. He tells Alex, I don't think this was a malfunction. I think it was your mother. I think Melanie's alive. In episode 8, Alex takes Wilfred's theory, heads back to the engine, talks to Ben about it, and they start looking at if this theory could actually hold water. And it does. Now, they just have to tell Leighton. Leighton is currently in a meeting with Asha. He has to find out if what he witnessed in his latest vision is true. If he basically just made the whole thing up based on a calendar. And unfortunately, she confirms that the image that he drew, the image that he saw, was nothing more than an image from a calendar that was in the locker where he found her. He now knows that he made it all up. He then gets the word that Alex is looking for him, so he heads up train. They let him know that some of the track switches have lost power. That's because somebody is moving down the track and flipping them off. When you follow the breadcrumbs, it leads to the Rocky Mountain test track. There is a facility on that test track, so in theory, she could have reached it and gotten a track scaler or a plow, but these are bare bones machines. They're not exactly used to support life. There's a chance that the vehicle is moving and Melanie isn't in it, or Melanie's body is in it. The vehicles are autonomous, so they could continue to go on for years. They've tracked down this vehicle, and it's about 2 days away. They then let Leighton know that they got this information from Wilfred. And right away, Leighton says, all right, what's his angle? He's got to be messing with us. But instead of waiting for an answer, Leighton just says, I'll go find out. And he goes and talks to him. What Leighton can't figure out is the fact that Wilfred left Melanie out there to die. So why does he suddenly care if she's alive? Why does he want her back? He figures this might be a ploy to knock them off course and crush their spirit. But Wilfred tells him, I wouldn't do that to Alex. But as Leighton knows and Wilfred points out, if there's any hope that she's out there, they have to go after her. And they do. Everybody's in agreement. They're going to take this 2-day detour and they're going to try to find Melanie. Ruth makes an announcement to the entire train letting them know that they're now on a detour and that Melanie could be alive. A lot of people are thrilled about this. One person that isn't is LJ. She finds Osweiler and starts freaking out because she knows that if Melanie gets back on that train and finds them running the night car, she'll put an end to it pretty quickly. Osweiler, though, isn't really concerned. He tells her, we're getting off this train. You just don't seem to believe it. And Osweiler has started to put the wheels in motion for this. He started to preserve food for over a year. LJ doesn't really want to hear about that, though. She's not just willing to sit around. She has to go find out exactly what this is about, and that means finding Wilfred's people. And there's one person she knows she needs to talk to, and it's Dr. Hedwood. Hedwood, though, does not want to see her at all, but LJ weasels her way into the medical bay. She tells Hedwood that she could be useful to Wilfred and his supporters, and it really should concern her that Melanie's about to reboard the train. Hedwood thinks about it and tells her, okay, if you want in, the price is a skin graft. LJ doesn't really have another option, so she agrees to it. And it's really painful, but she weirdly likes it. So, Osweiler, you have yourself a freak on your hands, as if you didn't already know. She thanks LJ for the contribution and tells her, we'll call you when we're ready. But as LJ is leaving, she hears somebody groaning from up top. She asks, who is that? But Dr. Hedwood just ushers her out. After LJ leaves, Dr. Hedwood does head up there to check on her patient, and we don't exactly see who it is, but whoever it is, she's keeping it a pretty good secret. And as LJ was giving that skin graft, Leighton was trying to make sure that him and Zara were on good terms, which they are. But then Leighton gets a knock at his door, and it's Asha, who is dressed up in a toxic suit, and she lets him know that they have bad news. Asha brought with her onto Snowpiercer a device that reads the atmosphere, and really everything in it. It starts beeping when there's toxicity in the atmosphere, and it started going off. The problem is the satellites on Snowpiercer aren't picking up anything, so at first, Ben and Alex just thinks that Asha's device is malfunctioning. But it's hard to argue with her because she did maintain air quality at a nuclear power plant, so they have to kind of listen to her. And as they're trying to figure out exactly what is in the air, Leighton sees it up ahead. It looks like a dust storm, but it's a dust storm full of toxic, acidic materials in the air, and they have to go right through it. They start thinking that Wilfred put them onto this track specifically to run into this toxic air, so they go get him and they confront him about it. But he's just as surprised as they are. He even mentions to Alex, we came through here like 18 months ago. This wasn't here. Now that it's settled that Wilfred really didn't know that it was there, they have to figure out what they're going to do. Wilfred tells him that the HVAC system can handle something like this. And when Asha brings up that whatever's in the air is also corrosive, Wilfred tells her that that was already planned for in the design of Snowpiercer. So it's basically settled. They're going to head through and hope for the best. They do have to make an announcement to Snowpiercer civilians to go shelter in place. Two people that are going to have to do this are Till and Audrey. They were having a good chat about rock bottom and whatnot. When the announcement is made, Roach is actually the one to tell everybody, let's go, people, you got to get moving. And Till asks, what do you need me to do? But Roach tells her, nothing right now, just go shelter in place. Till knows that Audrey has nowhere to go, so she invites her to go shelter in place in her cabin. Once they get into Till's place, Till does call the engine and asks, what do you guys need me to do? But she gets the same response that Roach gave her. Nothing right now, just hang out. Till definitely feels left out. Now Till and Audrey have to figure out something to do to bide their time. Till starts showing Audrey all the food she has and also all the alcohol, but Audrey tells her, I'm actually on the wagon right now. But Till isn't. So she starts drinking a lot, which is something that Audrey has noticed. She can tell that something is really bothering Till, so she puts her through the same procedure that she used to put her customers through in the night car. And what's really bothering Till is who she used to be. Before Leighton took over Snowpiercer, when she was just a brakeman, she was horrible. She just can't believe that person existed. She's kind of freaking out a little bit, and Audrey whispers in her ear, you changed. Your past may be rotten, but your core is not. When Till opens her eyes, she gives Audrey a big hug. She does feel better. Another person who's sheltering in place and gets a surprising visitor is Wilfred. And the visitor is Zara, along with Liana. Zara figures that Wilfred deserves to see Liana. After all, he did a lot for her. As Wilfred is holding Liana, he starts asking, have you noticed any differences because of the cold treatment we gave her? And Zara's kind of turned off and says, no. What do you expect to see? She's really addicted to ice cubes? We're not exactly putting her in a cold box. He then hands over the baby, starts to walk away, but Zara stops him and says, I think I've figured this out. Everyone's expecting a savior in Melanie, but she's a complete wild card, and you think she'll be divisive. Wilfred brushes that aside and says, all I did was provide some facts. I didn't even provide proof of life. Zara, though, doesn't trust him. A little bit down train, Roach, who is essential, goes and checks on Callie. Callie's still mourning the loss of her mother, and everything that happened, she kind of puts it in the viewpoint of what her mother would be going through. So the fact that Melanie might be out there, she starts thinking, what if her mom's out there too, even though she knows that she's not. Roach tells Callie what he does to help cope with the pain. And it's a little ridiculous, but he tells himself that Anne is currently in the closet. He knows she's not, but it does help. He then gets Callie's mind off things by playing an old cassette tape and singing horribly. Another two that are essential are Javi and Sykes. They're going train to train just to see if the air quality is still pure, and it is. One of the trains, though, features Wilfred's dogs, and Sykes is helping Javi get over his fear of the animal. He's doing better, but as soon as the dog barks, he gets out of there. He can't get over the fact that he's supposed to lead people off this train, but he gets terrified when a simple dog barks at him, and Sykes tries to calm him down. They continue to move car to car, and everything's going fine until they reach one particular car where the air quality is crap. That's because in this one particular car, the air from the outside isn't quite getting filtered properly. Javi and Sykes let the engine know, they put on some gas masks, and they start checking the filter. And as soon as they open it up, that toxic air rushes in. The filters are completely corroded. They also can't seal the air in. If they don't stop it soon, it's going to spread throughout the train, and they're going to have a real issue on their hands. To make things worse for Javi, Sykes goes down. So he has to drag her into a completely separate compartment and just hunker down until help arrives. And help has to act quickly because this toxic air is spreading through a bunch of compartments that are very important, like vegetation, poultry, things that you definitely need. Leighton and Asha put on some hazmat suits and get to work. They start heading down train, and the first people they find are Javi and Sykes. When they release them, Javi tells them what they're going to have to do, and then he takes Sykes to go get some help. She's still struggling quite a bit. When it comes to containing the leak, Leighton and Asha are going to have to do this thing manually. Problem is, they can't fit through a small hole with the suits that they're wearing on. Leighton says, all right, I'll just take my suit off, but Ben warns him, you cannot do that. If you do that, you'll be dead in a couple of minutes. Problem is, they don't really have another option. It's either Leighton sacrifices himself for the betterment of the train or everybody on the train dies. Asha decides she's not going to let that happen. She knocks Leighton down, takes off her suit, and heads through the hole. Leighton can't stop her, so he starts directing her on what she's supposed to do. And it works. Asha is able to stop the spread of the air. But just like Ben warned her, she was only going to last a couple of minutes. She can't make her way back up through the hole to put her suit back on. Her last dying wish from Leighton is to describe exactly what he saw in his vision. Leighton feels horrible, though. Ruth comes and finds him and tries to make him feel better about the fact that this was Asha's decision. And he basically vows to find New Eden for her, even though he still knows that he made up New Eden. The good news is, though, Snowpiercer gets through this toxic air cloud. Ben gives the all clear and everybody can stop sheltering in place. Up in the front of the train in the engine, Alex and Ben know that they should be close enough to get the location of exactly where Melanie could be. And then all of a sudden, on the map, it pops up. Now it's just a matter of going and getting her. In episode 9, Till ends up waking up late and she's got Audrey spooning her. She realizes that she needs to get dressed and get up train. Before she does head up train, she asks Audrey, is there something between us? I mean, I know you must get this all the time because of what you did, but am I reading into this too much? And Audrey admits, I would get this from time to time, but not like this. Till tries to process this, but she has to get going. She's running late because this is the day that they think they're going to find Melanie. And in fact, it is. At least they think. They find the little vehicle that Melanie should be in. But when they try to contact her, she doesn't answer. They don't get worried, though. They figure maybe she's on another channel. They quickly catch up to her vehicle and realize they need to get it inside of Snowpiercer. And the people in the engine aren't the only ones who are monitoring this. So is Wilfred from his prison. Although, bougie-ass prison. The big question on both Wilfred and the engine's mind is if she's alive or not. When Till eventually meets with Leighton, he tells her, go get Dr. Pelton. We think we found Melanie. And then both Leighton and Josie get dressed to go wrangle in Melanie's closet of a vehicle. It takes a lot to get Melanie's vehicle into Snowpiercer. We're talking track manipulation by Ben, hooking the thing up, but eventually they are able to get it inside. When they confirm that the vehicle is inside Snowpiercer, Javi takes over for the engine, and Alex runs to go see if her mother is alive. The good news is, she is. Melanie was able to stay alive because she kept taking suspension drugs. And Snowpiercer finding her couldn't have come at a better time because she was on her last bag. She wasn't going to live much longer. When Dr. Pelton gets to her, she puts her in a coma and slowly wakes her up. In the meantime, the rest of Snowpiercer heads to the Horn of Africa. It's back to the mission at hand, New Eden. A couple days later, maybe a week later, it seems like a good enough time has gone by because they're pretty close to the Horn. And that's when Melanie snaps out of her coma. Right by her side is Alex, and she is thrilled to see her daughter for the first time in months. Alex tries to quickly get her caught up on all the goings about with Snowpiercer, but the two just can't hide their excitement to see one another alive. And Alex isn't the only one that's thrilled to see Melanie, so is Ben. After all, he's in love with her. Word quickly circulates to the train that Melanie is alive. When Ruth hears it, she goes and finds Roach, tells him, but the real reason she showed up wasn't to alert him that Melanie's alive. She has an idea. They're about to pass by the pyramids for what probably is the last time if they're getting off the train. She wants to throw a big party for everybody. And Roach says, yeah, a party's something I desperately need. So Ruth gets after it, planning this big party for that night. Word has also gotten to Wilfred that Melanie's alive. Alex fills him in on how exactly Melanie stayed alive the entire time, and Wilfred's impressed. But when Wilfred asks to see Melanie, Alex scoffs at that request. As far as Alex is concerned, the closer they get to New Eden, the closer he is from never being a part of their lives again. Leighton also hears that Melanie is alive, of course, and he goes to visit her right before she's discharged from the medical bay. She thanks him for keeping the train going and for keeping Alex safe. Leighton kind of laughs at that and says, we wouldn't have made it this far without her. Melanie then lets Leighton know that she was filled in on everything that went on, but she's also been able to discern that Leighton lied to the passengers about New Eden. She knows there's no way he was actually at New Eden. He asks, do you disapprove? And she doesn't really answer the question. She just says that when you lie, you better be sure that you're right. He asks her, is that what you told yourself? And then they both have a laugh, and he says, I'm glad you're back. He then escorts her to where she belongs, the engine. She gives Javi a giant hug, takes a seat in the chair, and it's as if she's never left. After getting reacclimated, she starts looking at the data that was collected for the Horn of Africa. Ben walks in and explains that the more data they put in, the more that everything pointed to the Horn of Africa. She asks him, as Javi looked over this, and Ben says, yeah, top to bottom, he's on board. But Melanie mentions that Javi's only on board because everybody told him that they've been there already. Ben doesn't want to correct that line of thinking because it's helping him heal. What Melanie's worried about is the fact that the data is not as strong as everybody thinks. What's really driving people's opinion is this hope that it's alive, and the lie that people have been there before. The date is just a big question mark. She tells Ben, I have to go talk to Wilfred. I have to find out why he found me. He's up to something. So Ben and Leighton escort Melanie over to where they're keeping Wilfred. Melanie goes in there alone. She feels like if she's alone, he's more likely to spew exactly what's on his mind. And after they get the pleasantries out of the way, they get right to it. He tells her, I'm tired of being the only sane person left in the world. I need your help. I know you've seen it by now. This whole train is caught up in this fantasy. New Eden is ridiculous. If you take the hope out of it, the data is borderline, and you can't convince me that Leighton's been there already. That story has holes. And let's just add the track conditions to the equation, because you know they weren't great 8 years ago. He pitches her on teaming up. Somebody has to be the grown-up, he says. Once they make the turn, there's no coming back. They're going to the Horn of Africa. He even drops the S word. Safe. We have to keep these people safe. Melanie thinks about it and then leaves. As Melanie and Wilfred were talking, so were Ben and Leighton. It wasn't about the Horn of Africa, though. It was about Ben's old flame returning. Leighton tells him, I'm happy for you. And Ben's advice is, I see the way that you look at Josie. Don't do what I did. Don't wait too long to say it. But that's what the leadership of the train is up to. Most of the train is getting ready for the party that night. You would think two people that would be thrilled to host a party would be the managers of the night car, LJ and Osweiler. And while Osweiler is, LJ is up to something, and she won't tell Osweiler what it is. It forces Osweiler to go follow her throughout the train. And when he does, he sees that she has a weird interaction with Dr. Hedwood. Hedwood gives LJ something, but Osweiler can't see exactly what it is. He heads back to the night car and starts getting dressed for the party, never bringing it up to LJ once. When one of Wilfred's people shows up looking for LJ, Osweiler tries to throw her out, saying, she's not interested in what you're selling, and plus, we're closed tonight. But LJ comes from the back and tells the woman, don't worry about him, he's out of the picture, and hands the woman what Dr. Hedwood had given her. When the woman leaves, Osweiler asks LJ, what are you doing? If you align with those people, we're both going to get burned. LJ starts to distract Osweiler, though, seducing him, throwing him down on the bed, but then going full LJ on him, pulling out a knife and scaring the ever-loving crap out of him that she's going to kill him. She starts asking him, what changed in you? Why am I not enough? And just to save his own life, or his dick, he starts reassuring her that he does love her, begging her to take the knife away. She eventually does and tells Osweiler, I love you too, but don't think that I won't sacrifice what I love to get what I want. They then continue to get ready for this party as if nothing happened. Up train, Melanie is helping Alex get ready for the party, and Alex is nervous. She wants to be perfect for Carly. She tells Melanie, the last time I tried to have a friend, it was LJ, and that didn't really work out too well. It's these mother-daughter moments that Melanie just cherishes. Melanie does go from talking about the party to talking about New Eden with Alex, asking if she's nervous at all about the data because it is inconclusive. Problem is, no one actually knows if it's there or not. Alex admits that if you show the data to 10 different scientists, you're probably getting 10 different answers. Melanie asks her, what's yours? 80% chance of survival? 60? And what about the track conditions? We could derail before we even get there. Alex points out, well, we do have our best driver back with us, i.e. Melanie. Alex's answer to her mother is basically, we decided this and we're headed there, so tough cookies, we're not turning back. The two then head to the party. Till would also like to head to the party, but she wants to head there with Audrey. She asks Audrey if she wants to go on a date to the party, and Audrey would love to go on a date, but she doesn't want to go to the party. She's not ready to face Leighton and the rest of his crew. So Till decides to go take her to another place that she's familiar with, the night car. It is empty after all. As Audrey and Till are standing in the room where Audrey used to do her magic, they end up making out, hooking up, having some adult fun. Now before Leighton heads to the party, he has to get something out of the way. He really did take what Ben said to heart. So he pulls Josie into the hospitality room and says, I love you, Josie. I've loved you for a long time. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. And Josie looks at him and says, you think I didn't know that already? I love you too, and I hope you know that. But I can't be with you. Not right now, at least. I'll see you at the party. And then she walks out. And that's it. Everybody else does end up going to the party. Everybody's enjoying themselves, waiting to see the pyramids for the last time. And this is the first time that a lot of people are seeing Melanie back. When she enters the room, Ruth starts clapping for her, and pretty much everybody else follows suit. She gives a giant hug to Ruth, and then starts mingling throughout the guests. She meets Carly for the first time, but the real person she wants to talk to is Leighton. She tells him, I don't think New Eden's a good idea. The math doesn't add up. You need a new idea. Leighton tells her, we're going, and then walks off. And Melanie doesn't have a chance to talk to Leighton because Ruth gets up and makes a speech about approaching the pyramids and what a moment it is for everybody. Melanie uses this distraction to sneak off, making her way to the microphone, where she makes an announcement of her own. It does come at a bad time because Osweiler is in the middle of telling Roach that LJ is up to something. But everyone turns their attention to the speaker when they hear Melanie talk, and she reveals that New Eden is nothing more than a lie. Not only that, the journey is unsafe, the track isn't sound, and if they knew what they would find when they get there, it probably would be worth the risk, but the problem is they don't know what they're finding. This news comes as a shock to just about everybody, except Leighton, Ben, the people who know that New Eden is a myth. When Melanie signs off, the crowd turns against Leighton pretty quickly. He instructs Zara to take the baby to Big Alice. He'll meet them there shortly. And then him and Ben head to the engine, but they're too late. Javi is standing there with Melanie, and Javi feels betrayed. And both Javi and Melanie lock Leighton and Ben out. With nowhere else to go, Ben, Till, Josie, Zara, Leighton, they all head to Big Alice's engine. Melanie gets on the phone with Ben, and she explains that the turn is coming up. She had to do what she did. Ben completely disagrees with that, though. Ben completely feels betrayed, and he feels like Melanie killed their hope of a future. Leighton and his group need to figure out what they're going to do next, because it's them versus Melanie and Javi. Javi lets Melanie know that she does have support. First is secure. So she goes to check on Wilfred, but Wilfred isn't there. Because that Wilfred supporter that went to go talk to LJ was able to sneak in whatever it was that Dr. Hedwood had given LJ into the prison. Wilfred, sweetening up the guards with cigars, poisoned them, killing them all and escaping. So now Melanie has that to deal with. And in the season finale, there are 3 factions. There are Leighton and the Tail. There's Melanie with whoever is pissed off about the lie from Leighton. And then there's Wilfred. The big question is, where is Wilfred? Well, he reappears in the night car. And he's not the only one to reappear in the night car. That's where Audrey is, but she's no longer on Team Wilfred. She, however, doesn't make that clear to him. After all, she wants to stay alive. Each side looks like it's about to go to war, but if Roach has his way, he won't let that happen. Him and the rest of the brakemen are set up to keep the factions apart. We'll start off in the night car, where Wilfred has made his grand return along with LJ by his side. The only people in the night car that don't want to be there are Audrey and Osweiler. Osweiler makes it way more clear than Audrey, though. But Wilfred has a secret weapon. It's the thing that Dr. Hedwood's been working on. Their new cold man. Turns out Boki didn't die in the explosion of the aquarium. He was saved by Dr. Hedwood. And he's been turned into Icy Boki. Even though the old Boki was working with Leighton and his group, this new Boki is indebted to Wilfred and Hedwood. Shortly after the unveiling of Icy Boki, they get a visit from Roach. He wants to make sure nobody there is being held against their will. After a quick conversation with Wilfred about how Wilfred is planning on keeping both sides apart, he doesn't plan on killing anybody, Roach asks if anybody wants to leave. Audrey starts to climb out of her chair, but it's Osweiler who jumps up and says, yeah, me. This is to the shock of LJ, and when he tries to leave, Boki chokes him. He's not going to be able to just walk out the door. He's going to be escorted out, or I should say thrown out by Boki. Hey, but at least Os is free, right? The other 2 factions have yet to communicate with each other, and there's about 24 hours until the turn. Melanie needs some support, but she also needs to find her daughter. She asks Ruth to help her out, and Ruth is willing to listen to Melanie, but she's also not thrilled about how she went about things. She was a fan of New Eden. Ruth explains that by Melanie doing what she did, it really killed everybody's morale. Everybody was dialed in and going to New Eden on her behalf. And she tries to remind Ruth, that wasn't my mission. My mission was to find a safe route to get off the train. This isn't it. Ruth agrees to go track down Alex, and after a little bit, she's able to locate her and bring her back to Melanie. And Alex is pissed off. She tells Melanie, I heard you were ruthless, but who knew you would make your strike literally less than 24 hours after we saved you? Melanie explains to Alex that being an engineer means looking at stuff objectively. Alex ignores that comment and says, I need you to speak to Leighton before this goes any further. So they set up a secret meeting beneath the train. Leighton holds all the cards in this. He knows he has more forces than Melanie. Melanie's only defense is the fact that it takes a while to get from the tail to the engine, and she thinks she can hold them off long enough to go past the turn. She pleads with Leighton, telling him, I'm not saying we never go there. I'm saying wait till we know it's safe. Alex speaks up, telling her mother, take the turn. The young people want to get off. And Melanie says, how can I? It's not safe. I want you with me. Alex tells her, if you want me with you, then you'll take the turn. Unfortunately, neither side can come to an agreement. They go their separate ways, and it looks like we're headed for war. When Leighton gets back up to the tail, they set up their front line. When word gets to Melanie where Leighton and his army are, it's not good news for Melanie at all. She asks Ruth if Roach and the Brakemen will stop him, but Ruth tells her Roach isn't going to fight your war. He serves the people. Melanie knows that she needs an ally, and there's only one person she can turn to, Wilfred. She's not the only one who's meeting with Wilfred, though. Zara asked Ben to watch the baby, and she headed off to the night car to have a secret meeting with Wilfred because she wants to make sure their deal is still in place. He assures her that no matter what happens, her baby will be safe. Shortly after Zara leaves, Melanie shows up. Wilfred knows that Melanie doesn't want to come to him, but she's having to, hat in hand. She knows that if she fights this war, she's going to lose. Melanie explains that if it looks like they're united, the passengers will choose the train. And Wilfred agrees with that. But there's only one way this is going to work, and that's if Melanie is head engineer and Wilfred retired from engineering completely. Wilfred agrees to it. He just wants to keep some things, like control of the cold treatment. But at the end of it, they shake hands and they are now an alliance. They then call a meeting with Roach and let him know of the alliance. And since Roach works for the people, he now works for them. Roach thinks this is a terrible idea, and he tries to talk Melanie out of it, but there's no talking her out of it. And while they were shaking hands in the night car, down train, Osweiler was letting Leighton know that Wilfred is back, and he's positioned himself in the night car. He also tells Leighton about Icy Bach and Audrey being there as well. That's not a surprise to Leighton, but it is a surprise to Till. She pleads with Leighton that Audrey is not with him anymore. She promises. She won't go into details on how she knows this, but she swears up and down that Audrey is not with Wilfred, not anymore. He then gets even worse news. Ruth couldn't just let Melanie walk off and form an alliance with Wilfred and not let Leighton know. She headed down to the Resistance where she found Lights, and they're communicating through Rat again. So Leighton gets the Rat message, and unfortunately for him, he finds out that he's now outnumbered. A little while later, Roach and the Brakemen show up. Leighton takes it as an insult, feeling like Roach picked a side, but Roach explains it's nothing personal, it's literally numbers. He yells at Leighton, "You can't force them to the promised land." And he says, "So you're here to force us back to the tail?" Roach yells that they can discuss it amongst themselves, but they have 2 hours to stand down. And Leighton says, "We don't need 2 hours. Ask your brakemen if they're really ready to do this." Leighton starts rallying his troops, yelling, intimidating the brakemen, and it's working. Roach's men back down, but no bloodshed is spilled. Leighton realizes he needs to have a better plan. So he calls up Melanie in the engine to try to figure out if they can salvage this. Melanie isn't alone in the engine. Alex is with her. Alex left her friends knowing full well that some of them could die that night to be with her mother, but she's pretty pissed off at Melanie for even wanting her to do that. So when Leighton first calls up, Melanie thanks him, but Leighton says it was her choice. They then get into the issue that they have to deal with. What exactly are they going to do? After getting off the phone with Leighton, Melanie goes and visits Wilfred and lets him know that Leighton is not backing down. Wilfred isn't deterred at all. He's got a bargaining chip. He knows that he has something that will make Leighton do whatever he wants. He has his child. Melanie is pretty disgusted by the fact that Wilfred is once again going to use somebody's kid as a bargaining chip, but as Wilfred points out, it does work. So they set up a meeting with Zara. Wilfred, Melanie, and Boki head down to go meet up with Zara, and as Wilfred turns to Melanie and says, "This is everything you need to force a surrender," Melanie locks Boki out. It's just Melanie, Zara, the baby, and Wilfred. But they're soon joined by Till, Audrey, and Leighton, who has a weapon at Wilfred's throat. On the outside, Ruth distracts Boki in enough time to knock him out, rendering him unconscious. Inside, they tell Wilfred that he has an option, and it's his only option. It's to get in the same contraption that Melanie was found in and go around for 6 months. That's how much suspension fluid he has. He thinks that Audrey will be on his side, but she's not. She says goodbye to him, and then she walks right over into the arms of her new lover, Till. It sucks because you're getting evicted and you're getting dumped all in about a 10-second span. It's a tough pill to swallow. Wilfred has no choice but to agree. He gets into the vehicle, and Ben puts him on the track. Melanie and Leighton then get on the intercom and tell everybody that they've come to a peaceful agreement. They're going to split the train up. If you want to go to New Eden, you can go with Leighton. If you want to stay on the train, wait for a safe passage, you can stay with Melanie. That's it. And it seemed like it really is split. Ruth is going to go with Leighton. The other guy from hospitality is going to go with Melanie. Dr. Headwood is going with Leighton. Dr. Pelton is staying with Melanie. When it comes to engineers, Ben is going to stay with Melanie, and they're bringing one of Leighton's people with them, Miles. On Leighton's train, he has Javi and Alex. She desperately wants to get off the train. Couples are even split up. Osweiler says goodbye to LJ, and he heads to Leighton's group. LJ sticks around, but not for long. She's playing with her father's eyeball in her mouth, gets nudged, and ends up choking to death. And it looks like another couple is going to be split up. Till and Audrey. Audrey is staying with Melanie's crew. And Till looks like she's going with Leighton. But when it comes time to actually say goodbye, she realizes she can't do it. So she ends up staying with Melanie's train, and Audrey takes back over the night car where she belongs. And as far as brakemen are concerned, Roach and Callie, they're headed with Leighton and his group. That's going to free up Till to lead the brakemen at Melanie's car. This is a win-win for all sides. Everybody says their goodbyes, gives their hugs, and then the two trains split off. And it is extremely dangerous. It gets really dicey there for a while where it looks like Leighton's car is going to derail, and it basically all but does. Luckily, though, they do reach the warm spot, and temperatures quickly start to rise from -10 to -5. Finally, everybody from the car steps out, and they have discovered New Eden. Leighton did it, even if the train is kind of destroyed. Fast forward 3 months, Melanie is at the helm of her Snowpiercer, when in the distance, it looks like a rocket ship goes up, explodes in the sky, and the remnants of it are coming down. And she has no idea what it is. And that is how we end Season 3 of Snowpiercer. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. I really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, please. That'd be cool. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. And I have merch. Go buy a t-shirt or something. That'd be cool.